Okay, this is Jack Sheffield, Jack the exam guy, walking you through the psychrometric chart. Okay, the psychrometric chart demonstrates the relationship between the wet bulb, the dry bulb, the relative humidity, the humidity ratio, which is also known as the grains of moisture per pound of dry air, the dew point, and the enthalpy. Basically, you'll be giving two values of those above there up there, and you can determine the values of all the others by doing that. You'll plot them on the psychrometric chart where those two lines meet. You'll read everything else from there. It's not that complicated. You'll be wanting to be on page 1047 and 1048 in big blue. That is the manual that you're going to want to be able to operate. That's the refrigerating and air conditioning technology book, that one that's 1,600 pages. I call it Big Blue. Charts on page 1047. On the back side, on page 1048, it tells you how to plot the different things, whether or not you're going vertical at an angle, horizontal, or what have you. So you're going to want to be able to reference both of those pages as you go through, and as on test day as well. Okay, I'm going to get my pointer out so I can show you these things. There we go. All right, so let's look at the wet bulb first. Okay, so the wet bulb is read along this scale. Okay, all along here is where you read the wet bulb, and you plot the wet bulb. You plot the wet bulb at this angle along these lines right there. So that looks like it's a 65. If they told you the wet bulb was 65, then you would just draw a line like that right there. By the way, you might want to bring a couple of rulers with you during the exam. Most of the time, they will let you in the exam with the rulers. Okay, the dry bulb is read along the bottom. Okay, so we have wet bulb on that curved line. We have dry bulb along the bottom. By the way, dry bulb is just basically whatever the temperature is. Wet bulb's a little bit different. I demonstrate, I talk about, analogize wet bulb like if you're riding a motorcycle in the rain, right? You're going to be a lot colder in the rain than you would if it wasn't raining. That's kind of like wet bulb. Okay, so you plot the dry bulb vertically. All right, now all this, the way you plot things, if you want to look on page 1048, if you forget, it tells you how to do that. So we're plotting the dry bulb vertically, we're plotting the wet bulb at this angle right here, and then they're going to meet. And where they meet, that's what's important. And then you've got the relative humidity. The relative humidity is plotted on these curved lines. This one I kind of did a poor job of following the line there, but you can see what I'm talking about. So where they meet, where that line is, it's 40% humidity, right? That's our relative humidity. You plot it on that line right there, right? And then we've got dew point and humidity ratio, or what they also call grains of moisture per pound of dry air, same thing, is you go from where those lines meet, and you're going to plot horizontally over here to the grains of moisture per pound of dry air, or horizontally over here and read our dew point. So dew point and wet bulb are read off of this same scale, but it's just they're plotted differently. Wet bulb is at an angle like that. Dew point is horizontal, like so. Okay, and there we go. So that's interesting. By the way, humidity ratio, once again, and grains of moisture are the same thing. There's also something called pounds of moisture per pound of dry air. Not something you're really going to have to be worried about. Let's move on to the next one, and then you have something called enthalpy. I took some of this other stuff off of here so you can see a little clearer. When you carry your wet bulb all the way out to this line right here, that's called enthalpy. So if our wet bulb was 70, then our enthalpy would be 34. Okay, and you might get some questions where they give you a dry bulb and a wet bulb and ask you the enthalpy. Well, you don't even need to plot the dry bulb at that point, because the wet bulb will give you the enthalpy. Okay, so we are going to do a practice question. Dry bulb is 85. The wet bulb is 70. I want to know what these other factors are. The the relative humidity, the humidity ratio, the dew point, and the enthalpy. Hit a pause button. See if you're comfortable with this now. See what you can do. Hit plot the dry, plot the wet, see where they meet, and see if you can find the others. And I'll let you hit the pause button and come back and we'll show you how we did it. Okay, so we do 70 on our wet. We do 85 on our dry, and they meet right there. All right, so we should know what our relative humidity is somewhere, so this is 40 and this is 50, so it's somewhere in between. In my opinion, it's a little bit past halfway, so you're probably talking about, I don't know, 47 in that neighborhood right there. 46, 47, yeah, maybe 46. We'll go with 46. Okay, you don't have to be exact on some of these things. As long as you get really, really close, you'll be able to choose the correct answer. So our relative humidity is 46. Do you remember how to do humidity ratio? Remember humidity ratio is over here, right? So we plot it horizontally and boom, humidity ratio is like 80 what? 85, 86, something like that. Yep, humidity ratio right here. We come over here for our dew point. 55, 60, 61, 62, maybe a 63 on our dew point. Sometimes that's a little difficult to read. Okay, and our enthalpy, we just follow our, boom, we follow our dew point all the way out and we get our enthalpy. Wow, this is good stuff, isn't it? Okay, so I want you to do a sample question. Once again, grains of moisture per pound of dry air is 80. The relative humidity is 50. And then I want you to find the wet bulb, the dry bulb, the dew point, and the enthalpy. Hit the pause button, and then come on back and see if you got them all right. Okay, so we have 80 on our grains of moisture per pound of dry air. Boom, we come across that way. We have our relative humidity is 50, so this is our 50 line. So right there is where they meet. And when we want to go to wet bulb, it looks like we're just going to go straight up this way. And each one of these is 1, by the way, so that should be a 68 on our wet bulb. Let's see what we got. Yeah, 68 on our wet bulb. Come right on here with our wet bulb. And how about our dry bulb? We're going to come straight down from here. What does it look like? An 84? 82? Yeah, it's more 82. Each one of these is just 1, so that's 82. There you go. And then we're looking for dew point. Okay, should be right there. Should be somewhere right around 60, right? Yep, dew point should be right around 60. And then our enthalpy. Does that say 32? I think it does, or maybe 32.5, somewhere in that neighborhood right there. You'll get close. Okay, and that's how you do that. So there is a very challenging psychrometric question. All right, the first readings the technician took in the house were 85 dry bulb and 70 wet bulb. Okay, so that was before the equipment was hooked up. Now, what the aim was to get the conditions to 68 dry and 66 wet. And what I want you to be able to figure out is what is the change in enthalpy. So we should be able to figure that out with what we know now. So those are the conditions. All right, you might want to go ahead and hit the pause button so these won't go away. You're going to plot these and then see what the change in enthalpy is. Okay, so here we go. We plot our 85 dry and our 70 wet. Now remember, you didn't even have to do the dry. All you have to do is just the wet bulb. Save you a little time there. So 70 wet, go all the way out to here, and you're going to be somewhere around 34, right? That's fine. And then we plot the other one, which once again, didn't even have to do the dry, just do the wet. We go all the way out here to somewhere around 31. So what's our change in enthalpy? From 34 to 31. 34 minus 31 is 3. Not a big deal. not a big deal at all. So let's see what. I really hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you would like more information about passing either the Air A, the Air B, or the mechanical exam, feel free to reach out to me. My name is Jack Sheffield. I call myself Jack the Exam Guy. My phone number, my cell phone, call me directly, 904-755-4111, or you can go to my website, jacktheexamguy.com, or email me, jacktheexamguy@gmail.com. I appreciate you listening.